So is the bear market over and we are back in a bull market in all assets, crypto, stocks, everything else? Well, Fox Business would lead you to believe that. Over on Twitter yesterday, I posted this article where Fox Business says the NASDAQ enters bull market, exits worst bear market since 2008. So here's our friend Peter Schiff here. Don't know what he had to say. Didn't really look into that. But Wednesday, the tech-heavy composite gained 2.9%, closing at 12,854, officially entering a new bull market as tracked by Dow Jones Market Data Group. The gains were fueled in part by slight easing of inflation, which rose 8.5% in July, down from June's 9.1. Still, prices remain near 40-year highs. And we'll have the PPI coming out today, Producer Price Index. So we'll see what that looks like. So all the news yesterday, it was all about the inflation coming down. So the question now is, it looks like that inflation has possibly peaked, but the question is, has it plateaued? How long will it take to get down permanently? How long will it take to get it back to the Fed's target of 2%? Because the Fed board members, Kashkari and Evans, came out yesterday and said, we want inflation at 2%. We're going to continue to do whatever it takes to get to 2%. And they are going to continue to raise the Fed fund rates to their targets of 3.9% by the end of the year and 4.3% going into next year, that they are not stopping. They're not slowing down. They're going to continue to raise rates to fight this inflation. Because even though it came down a little bit, it's still obnoxiously high at 8.5%. Gas prices are down a little bit, but everything else is still soaring, as you all know and are experiencing. And the spin that's being put on it by the politicians and some academics, some economists, are that there was no inflation last month. So kind of laughable there, just because gas came down. And, I don't know what else they're reading, but I haven't seen food prices come down. I haven't seen really anything else come down other than gas right now. So pretty interesting, but that is good news. And hopefully we can start to see a plateau, because the markets cannot bottom until inflation comes down. Well, inflation needs to plateau and start to reverse. And the Fed needs to be able to not pivot necessarily, but stop the quantitative tightening. And they're nowhere near that. Again, they still have at least a full 1% to go this year. So they might do, the question is going to be now, after the debate of, has inflation peaked and has it plateaued, or is it actually reversing? That's the first question. Second question is going to be, do the Fed raise 50 basis points in September after the next inflation print, or 75? And of course, they're going to wait to see what the inflation print looks like to decide whether it's going to be 50 or 75, but they're definitely going to raise 50 or 75, depending on the next inflation print. If that's way down for some reason, then they might go 25. But if it's anywhere in the 8s to 9s, they're definitely going to go 50 to 75. And then finally, the last thing will be the balance sheet roll off of QT. What's that going to look like when they're going to actually start doing that? And at what point in the cycle does that occur? So that's the liquidity coming out of the market that's been flowing into assets over the last couple of years. So those are the big things the markets are looking at, and the Fed has on its plate right now. So good news for the markets yesterday. Markets all bounced nicely yesterday. And as some are wanting to report that a new bull market has begun, here's Bitcoin continuing on its higher highs and higher lows. On the hourly, it had put in a couple of lower highs, but it reversed that trend yesterday and put in a slightly higher high on this time frame right here, a little bit of a higher low. So the question is, will that continue? Here's Bitcoin on the 4-hour, and here is Bitcoin on the daily. Or will this little rally here exhaust, and then we'll see a retest of these lows here and try to determine if this is going to be a bottom for this current cycle right here in this range, that 17.4, 17, 17.8, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever exchange you're looking at. Will that hold? And I do believe that price will go down to test that at some point to see if that low is going to hold before we continue on to higher highs. I think this is still a lot of a bear market rally that could continue a little bit higher, but it seems to be getting resistance right in this area. So we'll have to see. For Ethereum, Ethereum's got the merge. They've done some tests. Ethereum could continue up and potentially pop up and test this 2158 level before ultimately to sell the news, or buy the rumor, sell the news. So when the event does happen, the merge does happen, you can see price roll over again and retest these lows as well. And the reason I'm saying that is because traditional markets, let's take a look at the traditional markets, have had a nice rally here. but they're basically in line with what we've seen in the past. So if you look at this rally here, let's measure this, and all three indexes have done basically the same thing. This is the Dow Jones 12% rally. Let's go back to 2008. So 2008 and 9, the great financial crisis, markets kind of rolled over in the same fashion as we're seeing right now. And there was a nice 12% rally, 11.9, 12%, depending on how you measure it, right here in this time frame, which was about 30 weeks from the peak. So this rally occurred, the peak of the rally occurred about 104. Well, let's go to the weekly chart here. This will look a little better here on the weekly chart. Kind of measure that out. Okay, here we go. So from peak to the peak of this rally was about 30 weeks in 2008 and 9. So market rolled over. We had a peak right here, dropped down, bounced about 12%, and that rally exhausted 32 weeks from the peak before it started rolling over again. So if you look at that, where we're at right now, we're going to see the same thing. Here's the peak. Market right now is sitting at that 31-week mark. So this week, next week is where this rolled over the last time, and this happened across all three indexes. It was an identical pattern. Let's look at the top here. Same thing here. That's the let's see, from the last high right here to the peak here, that's about 37 weeks-ish. If you go from this here where it started dropping, you're going to get that 31 weeks again. From right here to this point over, that's 32 weeks. And then this rally on the NASDAQ currently is 21%. And if we go back to 2009, let's look at this rally here in 2009 in the NASDAQ. That was a 23% rally in this bear market, and that occurred, there's your peak right there. The peak of this rally was in that 32-week range. So the markets are basically repeating exactly what they've done in the past. Let's take a look at 2000, and the .com might be a little different. So there's your first rally. That was only 22 weeks from that first rally, but let's take a look at that one before it rolled over. That was a 41% rally before it ultimately rolled over. And of course, the valuation was much lower, so you can get much bigger gains. And then finally on the S&P, same thing. If you look at the S&P from the peak here, we're about 32 weeks in, 31 weeks in again on the S&P. And this thing popped about 14%. So let's go back to 2009, which was the last big bear market. And this jumped 14, almost 14.5%. And that from the final peak to the peak of this little bear market rally was about 32 weeks. So all three indexes did pretty much the same thing. And they're kind of repeating that pattern to the T right now. And as you can see, back in 2018, this area right here was when the Fed started QT the last time, and they were forced to pivot right here. And you can see nice little bear market rallies when the Fed was doing their thing back then. So these things are kind of what I'm looking at right now to confirm whether or not the trend is going to continue. So this is a pivotal week here, this week and next week for the markets, to see if we get continuation or if they're just going to roll over and this just becomes another bear market rally. And, again, we still have recession issues out there. You still have some economic stress out there, and the Fed has not pivoted. They have not stopped. They're really just getting started. They've got a long way to go. They need to get almost twice where they are now from an interest rate policy. They want to see inflation back to 2% before they stop and do anything. So right now, this is Bitcoin on the daily. And let's take a look at the weekly. Right now, Bitcoin has been battling for that 200-week moving average, and right now it's popped back up and found support. So we'll have to see if it can continue to find support at that 200-week moving average and continue on from there, either moving up or ranging sideways. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go along. And right now, price is above the 50-day moving average and found some support there. So that's the first step. Next step will be to get above the 100-day moving average and ultimately the 200. And of course, in the past, price has rejected at the 200-day moving average in the bear market. And if we go back to 2018, it happened 1, 2, 3 times that the price rejected at the 200-day moving average. So we still have a little bit of ground to cover here. You got to really get back above that 200-day moving average and really above all moving averages, kind of like we saw here, to really confirm a reversal and bull market back on. Bull market's price gets above all moving averages and finds support on that 50-day, 100-day moving average. When it breaks below the 50 and the 100, it always goes down to the 200, at least in the past. So we want to see it get back and reclaim those moving averages. So these are the things I'm looking at today. And we got to see what the PPI looks like and what the markets do and how they react to that. Earnings are still rough for a lot of companies. We had, positive guidance with a lot of companies, a couple of companies beating. Disney did well yesterday. But for the most part, a lot of companies are still struggling with earnings. So that's putting pressure and keeping pressure on stock prices. So we'll have to continue to watch. But good news, good rally. Will it last? We'll have to kind of watch, wait, and see. I'll see you on the next video.